You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, May 1st, 2025, as we record this show. The Chicago White Sox put together another blowout win on Thursday, beating the Milwaukee Brewers by a final score of 8-0. Miguel Vargas had a big home run, and Luis Robert Jr. made some terrific plays. The Houston Astros are visiting the White Sox this weekend, and we'll get to see the new City Connect uniforms on the field for the first time. But the White Sox are 8-23 this season, and not too far ahead of last year's pace. With April over, in this show we'll recap that month, looking at who were the bright spots on the team, what's giving us the most concern, and what we are looking forward to in May. But first, the White Sox homestand meant a chance for White Sox front office executives to talk to the media, and our beat reporter James Fegan was there. The pressing issues that's on the mind of all White Sox fans. Why is Andrew Vaughn still here and Tim Elko in Charlotte? White Sox GM Chris Getz spoke to the media to share his thoughts about how he's handling Elko at the moment and how he's trying to remain patient with Andrew Vaughn.
Well, Tim, he's hitting the ball very hard, actually harder than he's always hit the ball hard. He's actually increased how hard he's hitting it, and most importantly, how often he's doing it. I believe he's certainly leading the organization in home runs, and I think he's at the top in minor league baseball. Tim's a special guy. He's got tremendous leadership qualities. He impacts others beyond just himself. He is a pretty good defender at first base. He's putting together all-around quality at bat, so we're really happy with the development of Tim, and know at some point he could join us here in Chicago.
Is he a threat to take away any at-bats from Vaughn at first if Vaughn continues to struggle?
We're more focused on supporting Andrew right now. He's been one of the more unlucky hitters in baseball. I know he wants greater results, for the White Sox and for himself, and we expect more out of him. I know he's working very hard, and our job is to get the most out of each player, and we know that there's more in the tank for Andrew, but we also know there are players throughout the organization that at some point could step up and get that opportunity, and you want to make sure that they're well positioned to do so.
White Sox manager Will Venable was asked if he's ready to see Elko with the major league team.
Ultimately, Getsy's making those decisions, but we talk about all our players in the system all the time. That's part of this, and thinking about different ways to improve the roster, whether that's internally or externally. Obviously Getsy's the one leading the charge on those ideas, but we're talking and discussing those things all the time. If we think that there's a time where he can help us, he's obviously swinging the bat really well, and really like the guy, great guy to have, works extremely hard. So would be happy to have him at some point if it makes us better.
Venable also shared what he and his coaching staff are trying to do to help get Vaughn out of his current rut.
Yeah, just support him. I think we know that baseball's hard, and he's hit some balls hard that haven't gone his way. He's also missing pitches, and I think he'd be open about talking about that and honest about the fact that he's just got to cover some pitches and move some balls forward. And for us, it's just supporting him to do that, helping him recognize any adjustments that he needs to make, and just continue to put him in positions to go out and do his thing.
A bright spot recently, as I mentioned, Miguel Vargas, that big 3-run homer against Milwaukee on Thursday afternoon. Vargas has been on a hot streak in his last 15 games. He's batting .296 with a .367 on base percentage and slugging .463 with 2 homers and 6 RBIs. And it's in large thanks to the hand placement and bat angle changes he's made with the White Sox hitting coaches.
It's been great results. He's instantly been able to hit balls with more authority and put some balls in play where he might have been, putting them in play softly or even fouling them back before. So, we've seen the consistent approach where he's, had good plate discipline this whole year. And now for him to move some of these balls forward with authority, it's awesome to see him getting those results.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
The White Sox are barely ahead of last year's season pace and again will face the Houston Astros this weekend. They got 28 games scheduled in the month of May. They're already 1-0, but they do have road trips to Wrigley Field, Kansas City, who has suddenly won 9 of their last 10 games, Cincinnati, and the New York Mets. It's become a tough schedule for the White Sox. So let's revisit April to get us ready for the month of May. Joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gents. The White Sox salvaged 1 win against Milwaukee on Thursday, winning 8-0. So they're 1-0 in the month of May. A few weird stats, though. The White Sox are 1-10 in night games. I don't know what to make of that. As they're 7-13 in day games. 5 of their 8 wins this season have been blowouts, so they've won by 5 or more runs. Yet the White Sox are 1-8 in 1-run games, and the White Sox still struggle against the AL Central. They are 2-10. In the month of March, the White Sox were 2-2, so when we started on April 1st, they had a plus 14 run differential. Things were looking up. They finished April 5-21 with a negative 46 run differential. And James, I'll start with you. Are we seeing enough progress, or I guess even from the White Sox point of view in the clubhouse, to generate confidence that this rebuild is going to work after April?
What defines the rebuild working?
Like, we are on track to play competitive baseball where we have a prayer shot of being a 500 team.
By when?
2027.
Maybe. Like, I wouldn't say that there's something that happened in this month that really piqued my optimism in some way. I think it's a really uncertain time. I don't think their offensive core is fully in place. They need to do well in a trade to really I don't know, restock the system or nail the draft. There's things that need to happen. Brady Montgomery has like started off well, but to get himself to basically an age appropriate assignment, like I don't know at this point. Like I just set the guy who was supposed to be the cornerstone of the team to extended spring. Like no, like we're not there yet. Like there certainly hasn't been some major thing that happened in the month of April that makes me think like, oh yes, now it's good. Like there's been little notes. They've been subtle little like nice positives, but also like the team's probably a little worse than hoped to be. Uh, even if the hopes weren't high, all sorts of things have gone wrong or weird or on slow starts or just things that are like I wouldn't analyze like something even like a more of a coin flip scenario like George Walco getting good. Like you wouldn't base it off this month, but like that one's not going right. Like Hagen Smith has not looked like as good as he could be. Neither is Noah Schultz. Probably like 100% of what you hoped, even if I think his first month has been solid to good. No, there hasn't been like some grand development that makes me think like this is clearly like a well-oiled machine. On top of like the fact that like there's nothing they could really do in the season that makes me think like, well, they'll have like a lot of budget room in the future, or their stadium situation is secure in a way it's going to generate revenue. Like I don't know. We've been watching games. We've been watching baseball. It's been fine, but I haven't raised my expectations to some grand degree.
Do you agree with James, Jim? Are you in the same boat, the same feeling about the current state of the White Sox?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year just shattered so many standards of what we consider Major League Baseball. Like the prestige was basically eliminated. We basically saw what would happen if a AAA team had to play 162 games at the Major League level. And so when you have this year where they win blowouts once in a while, and like a guy like Edgar Caro comes up and doesn't look completely overwhelmed, adding to the mistakes of the team, or Chase Mydroth looks fine. You think like, okay, this is different. Oh, this is Will Venable in action. This is Ryan Fuller, etc. And then you look and they're like the worst team offensively, and pitching staff isn't as bad as I thought, but also the bullpen is pretty rough to where, the starters are actually decent by and large. I think Martin Perez was one of those reasons he's out. But when you look at the bullpen, that's the reason I think why they're 1-8 is because they have a hard time holding leads, or games get kicked out of reach, or they give up walk-offs, and that's a 1-run loss. So there's like a lot of ways, for that to manifest itself. So yeah, it feels like they're just a normal. The record's bad, but I think they're just more of a normal bad team. I think the Rockies this year are that god awful. How could anybody let this happen? Can relegation exist soon enough? Team this year, whereas the White Sox, I think, are going to be closer to the normal 100 loss kind of bad. But that was one of the things I wrote about over the offseason, is just like trying to caution everybody, including myself, of just treating a third consecutive 100 loss season as like improvement or going in the right direction, because in every other scenario, basically, you'd consider any 100 loss season a pretty a definite failure, ranging from like aberration to just a complete collapse of organizational standards. And that was last year. So yeah, I think if they win 60 games, like probably better than you could expect, but also everybody should expect better from a major league team, especially when it's the third year of doing this.
I'm more confident that the White Sox are going to be able to put together a solid starting rotation sooner than later that will keep them competitive. I am losing confidence in the offensive front, and we'll talk more about that in this segment as we recap the month of April. The April leaders for the Chicago White Sox, leading the team in home runs, walks, and stolen bases, was Luis Robert. The walks is the surprise. Robert had 4 home runs in the month of April. He walked 16 times, and he stole 11 bases. Luis Robert is one of the leaders in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. Leading the White Sox in RBIs in the month of April, Brooks Baldwin. Baldwin had 13 RBIs. Cheer, Jim. That's your guy. Also, another surprise, stand-up Lennonites. Lenine Sosa led the White Sox with 27 hits in the month of April. Innings pitched for the White Sox, Shane Smith, 32 and a third innings. Strikeouts, Smith with 26. Several starters had one win. Nobody had more than one win for the White Sox. Smith had the best qualified ERA of the group. And saves, congratulations to Brandon Eisert. He still has the only save for the White Sox. In order to feel better about the White Sox and this particular rebuild, they need a significant trade to add more young talent to the pipeline. And really the only person that can do that for the White Sox is Luis Robert. There's good news though. Robert has suddenly turned a corner here. In the last 7 games, Luis Robert is batting .286 with a .375 on base percentage and slugging .536. If he can maintain that slash line for an entire season, he's an all-star, easily the all-star representative for this White Sox team. And against Milwaukee in this past series, he was 5 for 12 with a home run, 5 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases. Jim, we spent a lot of time in April wondering what is going on with Luis Robert. Is this the worst case scenario? Well, in the very last week of April and now starting in May, he seems to be getting back on track to the Luis Robert that we are expecting. Are you feeling better about Robert?
I'm going to say no, just because when I say yes, it turns into a no pretty quickly. So I'm going to try to flip the script a little bit and say that, it's just a flash in the pan. He'll be back to a 500 OPS in no time. But there was a quote that I think it was Chris Getz gave about Colson Montgomery, saying that, we still know he's the best player on the field at various points, which I thought was like a stretch, and one of the ways that they're kind of going out too far on a limb to defend a player who isn't functioning right now. And sure enough, now he's being pulled from Charlotte to work with Ryan Fuller for a week or two. But I think that quote applies to Luis Robert in terms of, take, for instance, Thursday's game where he robs a homer, makes another catch in the gap without leaving his feet, but covered a whole lot of ground, smokes a double that Jackson Churio didn't take a great read on because he just misread I don't think he caught it anyway, so the misread didn't matter, but he didn't anticipate just how much carry it had. And then he's running the base as well. And just like, you can see the athleticism and just the strength, and nobody on the White Sox can match that. So when, this month almost struck me as like him being bored a little bit, like, I'm going to start drawing walks. Let me try to work some deep counts. I might strike out a ton, but let's try walking, get on base more so I can run, because, as long as, especially since Chase Madroth is out, there's nobody going to be on base in front of me. So if I reach first base, I can steal second or try. So he's running the bases a ton, leading the league in stolen bases, leading leagues and getting caught stealing. Like, just, it strikes me as kind of like a sandbox for him. And there are some successes, some failures, but it's interesting, like, let him create, I guess, and see what happens. But finally seeing like the bat to ball improve towards the end of the month, I think, is what is going to get him, traded. And, so you hope that continues. But I think overall, like, the reason why I haven't been discouraged despite the numbers being bad is like, he's so active in every other regard that you kind of have to take it as a good sign, because we've seen so many months of him playing half powered or hiding, or not hiding, but like managing an injury, be it, hip or wrist or something like that, and just looking awkward or looking restrained. So the fact that he's playing so free and creating and freelancing, and sometimes, running into outs, but just, letting his freak flag fly, all for that, especially since, like, the White Sox aren't playing for anything. Like, he's not, no innings or games are really dying on Luis Robert getting caught stealing. Even if they were, they would be like, 9 wins, 10 wins. So it's not like something that's really disrupting, any kind of pennant hopes. So sure, run wild, run free, and hopefully the bat keeps it up.
James, have there been any specific adjustments that Robert himself has said that he's tried to make in the past week, or from the White Sox coaches, to try to get Robert back on track?
more approach mentality and timing than like anything mechanical. He kind of has talked about working to try to take more pitches and work more walks, and he's like touted his walks as like clearly a good sign. He even kind of said the other day, like, "Man, I'm taking so many walks. You think I'd be crushing all the mistakes I'm getting, but I'm not," and that was kind of the irritation to him. But was pointed out to me like he's sub 700 OPS splits for his career in April. He was well under 700 OPS in 2023 when he had this huge year. Like gets kind of said at the end of his briefing about Robert, like, "Hey, we just wanted to get him through April healthy, and we figured the rest would take care of itself. Like as long as he didn't pull a hamstring or tear a hip flexor in the cold weather, then we figured he'd eventually heat up." And at least this series against Milwaukee, right after he spoke, he kind of looks like he was right on the board. Like his plate discipline is improved. His bat speed still is ridiculous. Everything kind of physical is in place for him to play. And, you could argue that was kind of true once he, insisted he was healthy coming off of rehab last year, but there's not even like the specter of an injury that threw off his timing or anything that interrupted his routine to really lay back on. And, if he's healthy, he's still young enough to be in his prime. If he's still swinging the bat super fast, if his mechanics are pretty good, and he's actually worked in, using the trajectory in a way that, based on the way he used to talk years ago, you wouldn't expect him to really be all in on. It seems like he's doing what he needs to do, and it's going to come around at some point, and that will lead to his liberation in just a few months, and everyone will be happy on both sides.
Yeah, for Robert, bad month of April, but hopefully this torrid pace continues. If he is still red hot, even before and after the Cincinnati Reds series, I wonder if Cincinnati lets him leave town, as the Reds could use a center fielder, and we know that the Reds had some interest in Luis Robert this offseason. That would be one of those series that Robert can showcase to a possible suitor. He'll have a few more. The Mets are coming up. The Dodgers in the beginning of July. There'll be some opportunities for Luis Robert to showcase. And again, it wasn't a great April. We had some serious questions, but hopefully we do not have those types of questions in the month of May for Luis Robert.
I should specify, like, in everyone being happy, I mean more of a Luis understands this is hanging over him, and resolution is better than, waiting and wondering, rather than please get me out of here type of, 2023 White Sox veterans vibes. I think it's more just like, we all know what this is. Let's get it over with.
Yeah.
Closer to Garrett Crochet than
right. Like
Lance Lynn.
Hopefully I play well so I get sold to a premier team, a league team, and then my little humble Scottish team that I play on gets money to feed the village, stuff like that.
Got it. So let's take a look at the month of April.
European soccer understanding fell apart midway through that metaphor.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, sorry. Wrexham got promoted. That's what I know about European soccer. The month of April, let's look at the positive, James. What was the biggest bright spot for the White Sox in April?
I wanted to overthink this in some way, but probably Shane Smith. They Rule 5 pick, which is obviously very low investment level. You literally get it for losing, and we can debate, like, there's still uncertain things before, like, calling him like a mid-rotation starter. Like Eric was on here talking about, like, why we didn't quite get to give him like a 50 value, because like the velocity's a little uncertain, and his breaking stuff hasn't had that many dominant nights left, and we haven't seen it hold up over a season, blah blah blah. But like, you took somebody that obviously the Brewers thought was a reliever and not necessarily a impact one, that they weren't able to protect him, and turned it into what looks like, if not a long-term starter, a very compelling and interesting project that, probably, if he had, God forbid, if he ever had to go back to the bullpen, is someone who seems like he'd probably vaporize batters on both sides of the plate. So you took something from a very smart and well-run organization and turned it into an asset. It both is good on its own right that they have Shane Smith now, and also bodes well. So I think that's their biggest positive.
How about you, Jim? What was the White Sox brightest spot in April?
I had two picks, depending on what James chose, if he went first. So he picked Smith. So I'll go with the other one, which is last year, White Sox had the worst catchers in the league, Fangraphs positionally. negative 2.4 wins above replacement, 2.4 wins below replacement. This year, this is not updated to include the finale, but they are sixth, 1.1 wins above replacement. And it's all for good reasons. Like even before Edgar Carroll was called up, like Corey Lee was playing fine. We'll see if when it comes to the White Sox, they always seem to not like throwing to him, no matter what he does, or like the compliments are always kind of elusive when trying to, I guess, like hype up or gas up his overall game. But like he was producing in the small sample he had. Matt Thaiss is like more or less meeting expectations in terms of providing quality at bats. Like the production's a little wonky, but like these, draw a ton of walks, but at least like the OBP is roughly what it was supposed to be in terms of being above average for small samples. And then Edgar Carroll comes up looking probably about as good as he could probably hope for, the first couple weeks. So, that seems like the one area positionally where things have kind of gone the way the White Sox hoped, like kind of like a 70th percentile outcome. Whereas usually when it comes to the White Sox and free agents or prospect transitions, like it tends to be like they're hoping for 30%. And last year it was worse than the league. Was that fifth percentile? So yeah, catchers I think is pretty sound.
Yeah, for me, I was gonna point out that Chase Mydroth and Edgar Carroll both found success early. That they didn't immediately drown joining the major leagues. And Carroll hitting well in April. In the 13 games that he appeared in for the White Sox, 11 for 36 batting. That's a 306 batting average. Slugging 432. Sure, we haven't seen a ton of extra base hits, but he's got a good approach, especially with two strikes. He actually looks like he's hunting for pitches that he can hit line drives opposite field, no matter what side of the plate that he's hitting. Mydroth got hurt, but now he's back, and we'll see if he can be on the bases for red hot Luis Robert. If Mydroth's more consistent getting on base, if your lineup is Mydroth, Robert, and Carroll, it's funny to say that's probably the best that you can do for the White Sox right now, constructing a lineup. Having two rookies surrounded by your one potential to be a star in Luis Robert. But I find that to be a bright spot that prospects that we were eager to see in the majors are finding success early.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Let's flip the script. Let's go over what's the biggest concern after the month of April. Jim, I'll start with you. There's a lot of things to point to for the White Sox, but right now, what gives you the most anxiety regarding the White Sox after April?
I think I'm going to go with the bullpen. Yes. All right, good. Diversity. The bullpen is just, there's last year, I'm thinking like they had Jordan Leisure, throwing 97, good breaking ball. He was like, oh, we're going to work him into the, major league situations early. But then we're hoping by like June or July, he's going to be our high leverage arm, and didn't pan out. It was shoulder impingement and then but he didn't quite come back from that, and just everything was thrown off. So fast forward to this year, and there isn't even really like a Jordan Leisure type to get excited about. It's all, Steven Wilson's been good since he's come back. There have been some, Cam Boozer's been pretty good, but nobody who just has the stuff that makes you go like, oh, this is your closer. This is your high leverage guy. So I think, and it's kind of, I think, tied to the rotation in that, like, say if they have an injury to the rotation where all of a sudden you're calling in like Justin Dunn or somebody to try to fill in starts, then, that puts more stress in the bullpen, more relievers being used, and, you just start seeing the seedy underbelly of it far more frequently, and games get away and it just turns into slog. So I think that's kind of where I don't see the upside right now. And, that's, I think, going to be Will Venable's, maybe not his biggest challenge, but in terms of like game to game decisions to explain afterwards, that might be the one where he has to shrug his shoulders a lot and say like, I don't know, I'm trying to ride the hot hand, or somebody who's pitched well recently, but it could just all be smoke and mirrors.
So to follow up on that, Jim, because Ethan Katz has been around for a while. And if I were making a video game, if I was working for the company that did MLB The Show, I would give Ethan Katz, like if you hired him onto your team as a pitching coach in the video game, like +5 attributes for your starting pitchers, but your bullpen would receive -5 in attributes. Like that just seems to be the kryptonite right now, or the Achilles heel for Ethan Katz. We really haven't seen him help the relievers. He's done such a great job in helping the starting pitchers, and same thing with Brian Bannister. That's the White Sox strength right now in pitching development, is we're doing a good job identifying starters. But I have this sinking feeling when this team wants to win again, whoever's owning this team is going to have to spend a ton of cash in the bullpen. And Jim, you know how much I hate that. So I don't know what the solution is for the White Sox to find or even develop a relievers. But yeah, I think you make a good point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost like, they talk a lot about like arm slots and different looks, and, lefties and righties, and, seam effects and everything like that. And it's almost like they were paying attention to that, and then the spring training came around, like, oh, we don't have anybody who throws hard. Like we forgot something, kind of like a forehead slap, and then they try to scramble to make up.
I think they knew that, though.
Well, kind of,
right,
but,
James?
Yeah, I would say
they knew that they didn't have anyone that could throw.
But I mean, like, but it just, that's the way it feels like when it comes to like kind of the mix. They presented this array of arm angles, but then just felt like, oh yeah, velocity. And we've seen them chase velocity and not have that work out. So it's like not a guarantee, but that's where I think my, like, Penn Murphy, having the one,
he's going to pitch 90 games.
Yeah.
This year.
But just like, throwing, 90 miles per hour, if that's, if he gets up there and just, when it goes poorly, you can't really brute force your way out of it with some of the guys they're carrying. So that's, I think, the issue. And then, like, when you look at the minors, like, not a whole lot of, maybe like Addison Coffey is throwing okay. James Karinchak is around. Everybody is really excited about that. Peyton Pallette's been up and down. He's kind of had some homer problems in Birmingham, but there aren't like the, huge arms waiting in the wings. And so you can collect the guys they're interested in, and then you kind of do attrition and then replace the ones that are weeded out with the next generation of high octane White Sox bullpen arms. So that's, I think, where I think, as the season goes long, could be just a lot of guessing on Will Venable's part or Ethan Katz's part. And the reliever they think is going to be the high leverage guy in May 10th is no longer the high leverage guy on May 22nd. It's just like everybody's Justin Anderson going from closing games to being DFA'd and still in Charlotte because nobody claimed him.
Yeah, I was on the Peloton before recording this podcast, watching the Charlotte Knights game, and I got to see Justin Anderson struggle a great deal against the Norfolk Tide. So he is not back into a place where the White Sox can count on. Anderson to help out in the bullpen. So Jim has a good one. James was excited because Jim did not steal his biggest concern. So James, lay down. What's your biggest concern about the White Sox after April?
Didn't want to have to come up with a new idea. So that I also think like if I'm the creator of MLB The Show, I think there should be a mode where you have to be Ethan Katz, and then like you're like you have a stress level bar like that you're having to like keep under like red the whole time, and like different things, random things are exploding, and you're having to deal with it. Anyway, as kind of like when you're getting the news of a move like Colson Montgomery being sent to extended spring training, the people you're kind of relaying it from are almost exclusively trying to talk about how it's going to be a good thing and it's going to work out, and it's not like panic, it's just like proactive. So that when you're kind of presenting this news to the fan base, you do get some responses like, I don't think this is good. Is this good? This seems like a bad sign. And you have to be like, no, like the people who are talking about it can't discuss it, but this is obviously not good. Like this is not something that's done when things are good. This is a reactive, I don't want to say emergency measure, but it's certainly a first response sort of thing. So this is someone who obviously is very important for in terms of high ceiling bats are still lacking in the system overall. Certainly power bats are like lacking overall. Like Chase Mydroff looks like a really good injection to the lineup right now, but like in terms of like a 3-year span of like that sort of prospect, like Chase Mydroff falls and Sam Antonacci picks up his rifle and says like, we will carry on the mission. Like there's a lot of those like dudes.
Riku Nishida, William Bergoya, Jacob Gonzalez.
You won't fend them all off. One of them is going to get you. That's where you like can send one to extended spring and be like, well, hell, Alexander Albertus is manning the fort right now. Like they got one of their like contact heavy infielders like on patrol. So even if like this kind of works out, I think we're just tilting the expectations with him closer and closer to kind of low average, high strikeout, mistake hitter, hits power. And there's a lot of ways and there's a lot of avenues where that's still a productive hitter, especially the higher he stays up on the defensive spectrum, which at this point he hasn't ceded any ground yet, even if like the doubt builds, just because people are doubting and scrutinizing his profile more than ever. But I think you're tilting away from like franchise middle of the order like bat and closer to like a guy who provides power but has some limitations you have to work around that are getting kind of dug in, where it's building as much track record as he had of like, guy who's going to post a 400 OBP and walk as often as he strike out, which would look like in the lower minors. Like, I think they can still resuscitate this or revive this or even, Colson can have a long and productive career with, some meaningful highs. I just think the more some of these kind of flaws are baked in, it's more making like, I don't know, right now, which one do you think has the highest ceiling, Braden or Colson? I don't think that I think Braden was too far off to really see that, before he played a professional game and when Colson was still coming off of like demolishing the Arizona Fall League. But I think that's a lot murkier now, especially as you've seen like, all right, this guy's tools do play in professional baseball. Like he's going to have to figure out some strikeout issues. We're probably going to move him to outfield quarter, blah, 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 like all sorts of things they have to figure out. But you're probably seeing as much power potential as you are seeing up in AAA with Colson, and the flaws of here on the upper level guy seem a little bit more calcified than maybe they even are for a guy who's an A-ball. Not to say that it's going to go better or worse, but like maybe it seems a little bit more wider range of possibilities with Braden, whereas with Colson, it's kind of tilting towards like, all right, these are some trends that he's whiffing against upper level pitching in a way that like, yeah, you can make better, but you're not going to probably get back to like the guy who's striking out less than 20% of the time. That just doesn't seem like a reasonable expectation at this point. So I think that's pretty seismic just because there's not that much offensive depth, like as much as like Caro and Teal like are probably higher up than Colson on the prospect list. It's very much in the good hitter for a catcher. Like I don't think the ideal lineup has like Edgar Caro like hitting fourth. in it. It's probably having him more in a role that focuses on him being an on-base specialist. So
lead off.
Get crazy. Why not? We saw him score from first in Sacramento on a double. So, yeah, I think that's as much like one player.
He almost died.
He didn't need the slide, if anything. There's a necessary risk to calculate how that looked going in when next time you ask him to slide. So, yeah, I think like it's not to put it all in one player, but in terms of just like bats being like the big question for, the current roster, which is certainly use a 90 percentile outcome Colson on it right now. And just long term, like I think it's a pretty significant blow how this thing has started out for.
Yeah, I think like Colson right now, like the expectations are sliding to where like if he earns a major league call up, I think the response will be like, oh, thank God he made the majors. Just because the trajectory is such that all of a sudden it's kind of taken a nosedive. And it feels a bit severe to, go to that route, but also it's a pretty severe course to take him out of Charlotte and have one-on-one time. Almost feels like couples counseling. Like maybe it works, or maybe it's just the sign that it's not going to work and you need to start thinking about your assets. But I think, it's just a case where they've talked it around it for so long. And part of it, I think, is just, there's no point in, if a player's putting the effort and he's being, coachable or receptive to feedback and it's not going well, like they're not going to trash talk somebody making $40,000 a year because it's, just going poorly. But the way they even going into the season, presenting him as like the, having the inside track to the shortstop job, if it went well, that struck me as like, oh, this is why, who is this doing a favor for? And so like, I'm kind of relieved that they're taking it to this point, but I also don't know if they've been in denial for this long and they finally said like, oh, he's got to get out of games immediately. We don't want his numbers to get any worse. Like, does that strike me as like just DEFCON, was it DEFCON 1? Which way does it go in terms of scale, 1 to 5? I forget. One tornadoes.
You really wouldn't be talking about DEFCON with prospects at all.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, like, but just going from, it's still good to, now, now just getting, taking them out of play. So his performances don't have numbers attached to them strikes me as, whether it's they're making up for what they haven't done before, or whether they're seeing it now the way everybody, or like not everybody, will just say the Keith Laws of the world had been seeing it, to where, as he said in the podcast, like he had people saying like, you're not going to rank Colson top 100, are you? So he had like, I guess, around the league, a fair amount of doubters just for how his game was coming together. And, as I wrote about, seeing him in Nashville up close and just seeing the lack of action generated, like I kind of saw it too.
For the White Sox, at this moment, they do not have a long-term answer for shortstop or center field. As soon as they trade Luis Robert, Michael A. Taylor is going to play that position. We have no idea who's playing that position in 2026 and beyond.
Dominic Fletcher.
Maybe. Shortstop, if Montgomery doesn't get this fixed, if Ryan Fuller can't fix the woes, and there's even the whole defensive concern as well for Colson if he could stick at shortstop. You don't have anyone else right now that you can count on to be an everyday shortstop.
Brooks Baldwin.
Chase Maedra.
Chase Maedra.
Yeah.
Also, this like they did this weird thing to like Thursday because it was probably a blowout, so that's not something I can do other than like once a week. But like Jacob Maya is like the defensive closer. Like if they get a lead, he defends the final 3 innings and they flip around the infield for it. And he was worth it, but just a very funny shortstop arrangement if they had like an everyday defensive sub for whenever they're leading.
He gets his own entrance music.
Yeah, I mean, the draft is coming up in July, and I think I need to focus more. The White Sox need to focus on these prep players that play shortstop and hope that one of them drops to pick 10, because they may have to reboot and start over again and try to figure out who their future shortstop is, unless they're going to spend some serious cash or they get one in exchange for Luis Robert. But that's my concerns as far as the rebuild. Catcher, to Jim's point, I think you got that taken care of. But if the middle of the field is where you got to focus on building, and then out. I guess I'm pretty confident at second base with your options with Mydroth and Baldwin, but shortstop and center field, that needs to be figured out soon for the White Sox.
Why can't they just run an infinite loop of like guys who are slightly more second base oriented but have played shortstop in the past? Like Mydroth falls, Haral Perez picks up his rifle and continues on them.
Sure. Who cares about range at shortstop? It's overrated. Just strike everyone out.
If everyone's a second baseman,
we've done that experiment
all over the diamond.
The all Chris Getz team.
The all Chris Getz team. My big concern after the month of April, Edgar Caro was the only healthy, keyword, hitter to have an OPS over 700 while playing at least 10 games in April. So I hated this offense before the season. That's why I predicted that they would only win 50 games this upcoming season. I still do not like this offense, even though it may win me a steak dinner. So that's April. The White Sox are already 1-0 in the month of May, so hopefully the good vibes continue and they surprise us this month, even though, like I mentioned in the intro, this is a tougher month than expected for the White Sox now, especially after the first month of the season, how teams are playing. Road trips to the Cubs, to the Reds, the Royals are red hot, the Mets, the Orioles at the end of the month. We'll see where Baltimore is. They're in some troubled water. But whose performance for the White Sox are you most focused on entering the month of May and throughout the May? And I'll start because it's an easy target for me. It is Andrew Vaughn. Now, Andrew Vaughn is on a 4-game hitting streak, 4 for 17 with all singles. For the season, he has 3 doubles and 3 home runs.
You'll never be happy.
I'm never going to be happy. Wednesday, when he's got a chance to hit a walk-off homer, right? Because he's got guys on base. He is just in swing mode all the time. Like, you can't tell me, Andrew, that you are honestly wanting to drive a 99-mile-per-hour fastball in the outside corner. Like, come on. That's not the pitch, man. And whatever. I think he's just looking to get singles so he has some type of success and he can tell James post-game, yeah, I feel good. I had a base hit. Cool. That's what you're here for, Andrew. You are here to hit singles. Vaughn is currently on pace to hit 17 homers and 67 RBIs. At this stage, I'd be shocked if he even did that. But if he is as ass as he was in April during the month of May, this Andrew Vaughn issue becomes a Chris Getz issue real fast for Getz. And I don't think he was good GMing this offseason with how he handled Colson Montgomery in the shortstop position and seemed to panic during spring training. If Vaughn doesn't get any better and Elko continues to mash AAA, this issue is not going away for Chris Getz. And now not only do we have the Spencer Torkelson white paper, old friend Jake Berger has been optioned to AAA because Jake Berger has been struggling for the Texas Rangers and the Rangers are trying to reset Berger. So Vaughn, for me, easy. This is going to continue throughout May because if he's not hitting any better, it's going to raise some serious questions to the White Sox front office. Exactly what are we trying to do here with Andrew Vaughn and first base? James, I'll send it over to you. Who are you focused on entering the month of May? Who are you wanting to write some feature stories about?
Oh, I mean, want to? Like, that could be a lot of things. I think Brooks Baldwin's really interesting because I was talking to him in Sacramento about his approach. And I think from a distance, maybe not even a far distance, his approach could seem kind of banana pants aggression. And there's definitely a trace of that. It's certainly not a swing second approach. But just talking to him, like, he's very based around the idea of look at the kind of his zone is kind of dependent on the opposing pitcher, the way he terms it. Like he says he looks at like pregame scouting reports of what the pitchers are going to like go at and where they attack, and then kind of pick what he wants out of that and will pursue it. Rather than like, I am going to pick like this little grapefruit size area of the strike zone and wait until something comes in here. It's like, well, this guy isn't going to throw it in here, but I do want to swing. So what do I like swinging at best out of what this diet is? Which is how you'll see like a guy who's like I don't want to keep referencing this random game they lost 3 weeks ago, but it just seemed very demonstrative of his approach of like he was getting peppered with high fastballs and like they were off in a way where you thought like he could walk if he wants to, but you just saw him like flatten out his barrel and just swing helmet high and drive it for an RBI single just because he like clearly anticipated being up there. And that's very like Brooks Baldwin in a nutshell, where he's not a mindlessly aggressive hitter just reacting where he's doing, but he definitely wants to be aggressive and he wants to hit and is going to think about it, but it's going to look like, man, that guy really loves to swing. So I am still on the Brooks Baldwin's going to be like a long-term useful player. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I think if he's, and I think Lurie got as much as like I've unwisely fueled the like Lurie Garcia comps. And I don't think like I think Baldwin has a bit more raw power than that, and obviously it's different size. It's a different player, but I think he'll probably be stretched to put up like great metrics in any one spot if he's bouncing around so much. But there's still a utility for having him be a passable solution at like 6 different spots. Even if like I think if you put him in one spot, if you played him like Brooks Baldwin left field like every single day, like I don't think like Brooks Baldwin, I think he could be a plus left fielder. It's just like, why would that be the thing you do? So that would be interesting if I get to write about Brooks because he gets hot because he's a fun player and his story is pretty fun. I think more likely as far as like people will be watching this month, it's going to be Luis Robert because all the trade stuff is around Luis Robert. And when they win, it's about Luis Robert because he's the best player on the team. And you know, if they're losing, it's probably because Luis Robert's bad. And we have to be like, why is he bad? Luis, stop being bad. And he'll be like, I'm trying. And like it'll be a whole like back and forth that dominates discussion, even if that's not like it's not like Luis Robert's uninteresting, but the conversation around him is pitched in which I wouldn't mind someone else taking the stage for a bit.
All right, Jim. So why Luis Robert for you?
Well, just for the same reasons, like he's going to be the player who shapes the direction of the next good White Sox team, or at least like the next interesting White Sox team more than anybody else in this roster right now. So until he gets traded, until he does everything he can to try to boost his value, that's kind of what everything's riding on this season. Secondary to him, like Gage Workman, seeing how the White Sox try to game his Rule 5 situation and putting him on the injured list for reasons that seem to be not, or I would say short of substantial, but you know, are they going to keep yo-yoing him up and down or off, on and off the active roster because he's a Rule 5 pick, or you know, is he going to play when he comes back? But among players who actually are going to be around for a decent bet, like I'm kind of looking at, I would say, the tandem of Davis Martin and Jonathan Cannon, just their evolutions. I think they're good examples of what the White Sox are trying to do under Brian Bannister in terms of just get productive pitching, get guys who don't cost a lot and get paid by the end of their term, just by maxing out what they can do and coming up with different ways to shape their arsenals and different pitches they can add and different ways they can throw a changeup, etc. And it's been up and down so far, but I think, you know, Will Venable providing the opener in Sacramento, I think was a novel way to get starter innings out of them without bashing their heads into the same wall of like, oh, you're bad against lefties and you have to face 3 out of 4 to start your game. Like, good luck, Jonathan Cannon. Like, anything to alleviate that while also throwing 6 innings, you hope. I mean, that's great. So, you know, as they go along, you know, how is Venable going to manage them? How are they going to come up with counterpoints for you know, lefties who are on their breaking balls, etc. So they're interesting to me. Like every start that they make has something to watch.
Well, let us know in the comments section on the podcast post at soxmachine.com. Make sure that you are a subscriber so you can join us in the comments section. Love to hear what you guys think about in the month of April for the White Sox and who you are focused most on in their performance in the upcoming month of May as the White Sox try to win more than 5 games. That'll be more wins than they had in the month of April. So hopefully we do see more progress heading into the second month of the season. The Chicago White Sox continue their homestand this weekend as the Houston Astros come into town. The Astros are currently 16-14 on the season. They're 2 games back of the Seattle Mariners, so they're second place in the American League West, tied with Sacramento. The A's are 2 games above 500. Sneaky there. The Astros lost their last game, but they have won 6 of their last 10 on the road this year. The Astros are 5-7. Your pitching probables for this series: Friday night, the debut of the City Connect uniforms for the Chicago White Sox on the field. This first pitch is at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. It's Framber Valdez for the Astros against Jonathan Cannon. Saturday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time. Maybe the front runner of the American League Cy Young after the month of April. Hunter Brown takes the ball for the Astros against Davis Martin. And Sunday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time, making his first start since 2022, Lance McCullers Jr. is the probable starter for the Astros against Bryce Wilson for the White Sox. So Friday nights, when James gets into the press box after talking to Will Venable pregame and getting all that chatter and getting the game thread post ready to go on SoxMachine.com, he's going to see the White Sox wearing the new City Connect uniforms. And you can go to SoxMachine.com. You can also go to YouTube.com/SoxMachine, as Jim and I got a chance to sit down and share our thoughts about the new City Connect looks. James, how about you, though? Do you like the City Connect 2.0 uniforms for the White Sox?
I personally, I just appreciate that so many heterosexual men have like a way to channel their obvious burning desire to comment and be meticulous about fashion and color matching and channel it into something that they feel is heteronormative and thus a safe space for them to explore these interests that are otherwise are stifled out of them, to argue about piping. It's heartwarming that they have this outlet, and I think that's special. It's I'm sure a lot of people worked very hard in it, possibly even people I'll run into the day this podcast is released. The concept is uninspiring in a way that I think it's hard to get past, like all like the hyping of like, oh, what was it, whatever day they announced it, and it's like, what could this mean? It's like, obviously you're just, oh yeah, the Sox and Bulls are partnering. Like, how did they pull this off? Like, the sort of they look cool. The Bulls have good colors. They're not as bad as I feared when I saw that leak, and it looked like one that like Patrick Williams was going to play a baseball game.
The solution in center field.
Yeah,
when Robert gets
combining one of my larger outside work frustrations into work. No bueno. But the color scheme is fine. I think the jokes can bite themselves with like listing off the years of titles, which is obviously sparse. There's issues, but mostly like the concept is just not one. Like,
with the apostrophe the wrong way.
It's not surprising. It's not out of the box. It's not like a new look on this thing. It's just, it seems very much like what City Connect jerseys are, which is a cash grab. And I like the Bulls color scheme. I like color schemes that are black heavy. I guess maybe that's subliminally why I'm part here, but I don't know. I won't be getting one because I haven't bought Sox gear in many years, because that would be weird. But
you don't want to wear the new City Connect uniform when you're talking to the players tomorrow?
No, that'd be a weird look. I did buy like a Notre Dame like baseball like throwback jersey from like home field the other day that I'm very happy with. Maybe
I know they're on the yeah. Looks good.
Maybe I'll do that if I want to like start shit with somebody. Notre Dame is playing like in September. Like if they're playing Maryland for some reason, I bet Sean Burke would be amused by that. Other than that, I will not be partaking.
Well, if you wear yours, I'm sure Scott Merkin will wear his Michigan stuff.
There is that, like a mutually assured destruction situation there. It's good note, Josh. That talked me off the ledge.
Let's talk about the Houston Astros. So other than the story during the broadcast where they're going to talk up the City Connect uniforms, Jim, The Astros, pitching wise, very strong to start the year. The starter ERA for the Astros, top 10 in Major League Baseball, 3.61 ERA for the staff. The bullpen ERA is even better for the Astros as a unit, a 2.64 ERA. That's third best in Major League Baseball. So the Astros are doing an excellent job pitching. It will be tough for the White Sox this weekend to score runs against Houston. Offensively, the Astros ranked 23rd in Major League Baseball with a 667 team OPS. The Astros are tied with the White Sox in home runs hit, and that is a surprise. Nobody on the Astros team has hit more than 4 home runs this season. So I have to ask you, Jim, with their top hitters getting older, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, are you fading the Astros this season?
Not yet. As a whole, I think offensively, they are leaning a lot on Altuve being always Altuve, even though he's playing left field now. I think
Which is so odd. That's going to be one of the things I'm going to be watching if he is in left field this series. Is like, how does he do this?
I think it looks weirder in Houston though, because the wall is so tall there and Altuve is not. So like when you see Yordan Alvarez playing left field in front of the Crawford boxes, and then you see Altuve doing it, even though the scale shouldn't seem that markedly different, it is. So like that's I think something that worries me also, like going from the Jose Abreu mistake, I think is a fair enough term, even though it breaks my heart to say it, but going from like the Jose Abreu 3-year contract to Christian Walker, like going from one 30-something first baseman to another, even though, Walker is better defensively, still struck me as like did you learn the lesson? Like, did that click? You're seeing the White Sox make the same mistake, multiple times. Like, it struck me as poor planning or just patching with, maybe it's the Jeff Bagwell influence, like paying veteran first baseman who have proven it for years. And so he'll chase that guy all the time. And that's his blind spot. But, that seems like something where they barely got out of Abreu's contract, and now they're inviting a different one while they're also cutting costs. So I think there are some worries on the offensive side. Pitching side, though, while I was looking at their numbers, I came up with a story idea for James, depending on what's going on. But like, have you seen what Bennett Sousa's done with the Astros since he's been a member of them last year?
No, I didn't know where he was.
12. He's played 11 games, pitched 11 games for the Astros, 2023 and 2025. 11 games, 12 and 2/3 scoreless innings, 5 hits, 2 walks, 16 strikeouts, and he's doing it again this year. So, kind of curious how that happened, because like even Milwaukee, which knows its way around a reliever, couldn't really figure out like exactly what to do with him. I'm intrigued by his staying power, but then you look up and down the bullpen, and like they have the opposite vision of what the White Sox are doing in terms of leading the league in strikeout to walk differential. So many guys posting great numbers to where like, right now Josh Hader is the closer, but if he were absent, like you could probably come up with a few different ideas how to patch that hole. That's something where if the starters are good and the relievers are good, we've seen Cleveland just milk that recipe for years. We've seen, the Royals were like the one, how you drew it up, but we've seen the Orioles do that with outstanding bullpen performances over the years. Like you can get a lot of mileage out of a pitching staff that's running like 10 deep. So I'm not out on them entirely, but I think if they have success, it's going to be a different way of doing it.
That's a good point. I do like that comparison to Cleveland last year, Jim, because like Hader's already got 8 saves this year. Steven Okert, 15 innings. He's their setup guy for the Astros. He's only allowed a solo home run. That's the only run he's allowed in 15 innings so far. He's only allowed 5 hits. He hasn't walked a batter. That is a 671 ERA plus to start the season for Okert. And he is the setup guy. And Brian King has already appeared in 16 games. If the White Sox don't have the lead by the 7th inning against Houston, it's going to be tough for the White Sox to come back with how strong the Astros bullpen is. That's just the looking at the weekend itself, like how the White Sox are going to handle the Astros. But for the entire season, they got to find some more offense. And maybe they go the trade route to try to find some more runs. Jeremy Pena's having a very good season, age 27 season. He stepped up. He's already at 1.6 WAR, according to Baseball Reference. He's got a 791 OPS, so he might be the biggest threat for the Astros right now in their lineup. Yordan Alvarez, we know how he can turn on a switch and get hot real quick, but he's struggling to start the season. I just wonder if age is suddenly going to impact the Astros bats. And with the A's being frisky, and I don't know what to make of Seattle, I find the American League West more open than it should be. Like if the Astros were good on offense, slam dunk, the Astros are going to win this division. But because of that offense, I am a little worried and fading the Astros in winning the American League West. James, what are your thoughts about the Astros and your thoughts about this weekend series for the White Sox?
I will say that like there was points where like Bennett Sousa was getting knocked around, but like he'd throw like an 89-mile-an-hour slider and be like, I can definitely see a world where that works. So that it did find some place eventually, I guess, scans. But yeah, I was very skeptical of them. I still think like their depth is very diminished and like they're a very different org than they were, especially their reputation around the league and how they operate from a couple of years ago. Both good in terms of not used as the standard for amoral activity, and also bad in the sense of more have leaned into probably what are considered old school tendencies compared to being like on the vanguard of like analytical development a couple years back. But their pitching is still pretty good. I like Hunter Brown a lot, and he certainly carved the White Sox the last time he was around here. As much as like they haven't really gotten Yordan going like that well yet, and I'm not super like bullish on like Pena or Isaac Paredes's like approach or just like offense, like being super consistent, but to already kind of have a month banked and kind of getting by without your biggest, baddest super weapon like fully operational, or Yainer Diaz like being really slower in the early going is impressive. And mostly like if the Rangers aren't going to be good, which they certainly haven't started out very good, and their most recent moves are, you know, the core of the 2021 White Sox being all at Round Rock together. Then
Electric Factory, is that what that was?
The Electric Factory is in Round Rock, the Round Rock Electric Factory. Then yeah, I think they probably have a chance to hang around. The Mariners have been really good offensively, but that's not necessarily what you expect them to be able to fend off the Astros with. And they, you know, Logan Gilbert going down certainly weakens their biggest superpower. So I wouldn't fade them. I think they'll kind of, it's at least trending towards a team that's going to be able to hang around in some degree, weirdly, kind of the way they did last year. I don't think they're like a World Series contender, but as far as like, you know, a 3 wild card playoff format, they're kind of Michael Myers in terms of assuming they're not going to be there until something really disastrous happens to knock them off. It seems like they're able to round together competitive teams. And then they're getting McCullers back, who was a pretty good pitcher several years ago. It's funny because he was absolute kryptonite to the White Sox in 2021 when they're actually talented, because McCullers does not throw a lot of strikes, and the White Sox are kind of, those old White Sox teams are kind of swinging regardless. And now even this White Sox team, they study the way you're not throwing strikes and map their game of playing around it. Like, I think Grits gets put it like, you know, we're not so good at like making contact in the zone, but we're not going to swing outside of it. So they've suddenly become kind of a weird, interesting matchup where, you know, obviously we haven't seen McCullers in years and don't know what he's going to look like, but they used to be the good team that, you know, couldn't take advantage of this guy who doesn't really live on the plate. And now they're kind of this under-talented team that could maybe like make life hell for him with the way he pitches. So it'd be interesting to see how time passes if it allows us to kind of map the changes in that way.
Yeah, tough matchups for the White Sox Friday and Saturday to face Valdez, and then, of course, Hunter Brown. But we'll be recapping all the games this weekend on SoxMachine.com. Jim will be recapping. James will get the pregame notes for you guys set up. Again, go to SoxMachine.com daily, the minor keys. We have a new draft report. Just did a review of LSU left-handed starting pitcher Cade Anderson. I know for the draft geeks that makes you guys really happy that I'm writing about another college starting pitcher. It's a possibility for pick 10. I'm kidding, of course. We really need some college bats to step up, but a lot of content coming to you guys this weekend in the month of May at SoxMachine.com. Thank you guys for your continued support through April. And if you haven't joined yet, you can sign up at SoxMachine.com. Monthly plans start at $5. It goes a long way in sending James out into the road and for us to cover the White Sox like we do. We also have additional tiers of support that you can sign up for. And Jim has also set up a newsletter, so in case that there is something that you missed, you can check your inbox and you can see all the articles and all the content that we have created in the week. So go to SoxMachine.com and sign up today. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can subscribe to the Sox Machine Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also check out our videos at youtube.com/SoxMachine. And you can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. And yes, we are on Blue Sky. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.